morning. This is Emily Austin from the Episcopal Diocese of West Tennessee, and thank you so much for joining us this morning for Faithfully Memphis. Each week we have this terrific opportunity here on the podcast and on WYXR to talk about faith and how it plays a role in our lives and the way that we just practice it in our daily lives. And today in the studio, we're continuing with our series on creation care and environmental stewardship. And last week we had on Nick Wiggins from the Wolf River Conservancy. I highly recommend that you check out that. If you haven't already, check it out on the Faithfully Memphis podcast. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, all the things. And hey, if you're liking what you're hearing, please look for us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a positive review. I mean, you can leave us a negative review, but please just send us a positive review because that helps us to share what we're doing and for more people to find out about Faithfully Memphis. And it helps us out a lot. Share us with a friend. Share us with somebody who you think would be interested in learning about the way faith formation looks in the lives of different people. But anyway, that series is continuing today. I am delighted to have Michelle Cowan from the Clean Memphis Initiative here with me in the studio today. We're going to be talking about Clean Memphis's new Water is Wonderful campaign, as well as a lot of other really neat things that they are doing. And Michelle's life, we've just been in the studio for the last 15 minutes or so just chatting, getting to know each other, and y'all are in for a really special treat getting to know Michelle this morning. But first, we'll start out with our segment called The Saint of the Day. And, in our Episcopal faith, we have a calendar where we honor some people who have lived outstanding lives in their lives of faith. And so I was taking a look, as I normally do when I know that I'm slated to be on Faithfully Memphis, and I was taking a look at the calendar, and yesterday I noticed that we were honoring St. Wulfstan, and I hadn't ever heard of St. Wulfstan before, so I went on to good old Wikipedia. You can find whatever you need on Wikipedia, and I learned, and I was he had me within the first line because if you've known me for a while, you know that I am a medieval file. I love to learn about anything that has to do with medieval life and the way history played out during that time. And St. Wulfstan played a pretty substantial role during the Norman invasion and subsequent conquest of the Norman area of England in 1066. 1066 kind of, for us Americans and people this side of the Atlantic Ocean, it's kind of the, I've been told that for Brits and French people, it's the equivalent of 1776 in that it's a pretty important year in the history of their country. St. Wulfstan was the Bishop of Worcester from 1062 to 1095, and he was the last surviving pre-conquest bishop and the only English-born bishop after 1775, and he's a saint in many Western Christian churches. He was born about 1008 at, I'm not even going to try, Long Itchington. I can't, y'all. Long Itchington. I really hope that that's a real place. In the English county of Warwickshire. His family lost their lands around the time King Newt of England came to the throne. I love these names. I love these old medieval names. He was probably named after his uncle, and even and through his uncle's influence, he studied at monasteries in Evesham and Peterbury. So he was initially called to ministry at a young age, as people typically were at that time, and he was raised up to be a priest. And but he was primarily a social reformer. He struggled to bridge the gap between old and new regimes and to alleviate the suffering of the poor. He was a strong opponent of the slave trade, and together with Lanfranc was mainly responsible for ending the trade from Bristol. So at that time, the slave trade from Ireland to England was, it was a pretty bad situation, and so that was the cause that he championed, and so I think that's really that spoke to me a lot. You don't hear very often about medieval historical figures really advocating for the rights and human dignity of folks who were not in those ruling classes at the time. But Wolfston appeared to have really made sure to do everything that he could to pursue freedom for those in who were not in a privileged position. He, looking at my notes, he was responsible for the compilation by Hemming of the Second Cartulary of Worcester. I don't really know what that means, but it was in the Wikipedia article, so I would say it's pretty important. And yeah, so I just want us to remember that there are people in positions of power who are advocating for us, even when we feel like that we're not being listened to. And Wolfston is a good, shining example of that. All right, and we're back. I'm really excited today to have Michelle Cowan from Clean Memphis with me in the studio. Hey, Michelle.
Hi, Emily.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. Well, welcome to Faithfully Memphis. It's a pretty chilly morning here in Memphis, and so I appreciate you hauling out here and sharing with us a little bit about Clean Memphis and the new Water is Wonderful campaign. So can you kind of, for someone who's never heard of Clean Memphis before, or maybe has heard of it but is kind of not sure about ways to engage, will you give us kind of the 101 spiel on what y'all do and how long you've been doing it and all that good stuff?
Sure. Clean Memphis has been around for about 11 years. Started by my still boss, Janet Boscarino. Janet had the initiative to see that Memphis had been a clean city and was actually becoming very full of litter. So she took it upon herself to start this nonprofit to help Memphis get cleaner. And that's ultimately what we do, but we work in a variety of areas. We work with children. So our mission statement is educating youth, engaging leadership, and empowering communities. So we work in 3 areas, right? We work with children in the public schools. We work with the leadership. And when we talk about leadership, we're talking about city and county leaders, the mayors, the councilmen, the leaders that make the decisions around here. And we make sure that they're informed about what's going on as far as new technologies and new movements related to litter and solid waste.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound exciting, but it actually really is.
Oh, yeah.
And then we also work to empower communities. So, for example, during the COVID crisis, we got some money that we would normally use to have some large neighborhood cleanups. But during the pandemic, groups couldn't get together, large groups. So instead, what we did is we used the money to buy toolkits for neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes rakes, shovels, weed whackers, bush trimmers, things so that community organizations could lend those tools out to individuals that might not have those tools available to them, so that they could do cleanups on their own in a small scale.
That's really neat.
So we help to empower communities within Memphis to work on their own neighborhoods, and we help to give them the tools and resources to
the
help
literal tools,
Really?
And the resources. But so you are the educational director. What does your day-to-day look like, and how? And you talked a little bit about elementary outreach and that type of stuff. How does that look for you?
So we have including myself, there are 3 educators that work for Clean Memphis, and we go into the schools and teach environmental education. Standards-based education, except that we do it with a little bit of a twist. So we do it, make sure that we have hands-on, students are engaging. A lot of times that might mean they do a lesson outside in actual nature. But then also we put an environmental twist to some regular science standards. For example, students in middle school study physical and chemical changes. And that's it's pretty cut and dry, right? Frying an egg is a chemical change, and breaking a pencil is a physical change.
Yes.
But there are also physical and chemical changes that occur in the environment. That are very important for students to understand.
It's funny you say that, because just a couple days ago, I have a 4th grader at home, and we acquired a fish tank from a friend who was looking to offload his fish tank, and I think that when we went to go get all of our things that we needed for our fish tank, my daughter was like, "Okay, well, we need to get the fish, and we need to get the pebbles," and I was like, "Yeah, and we also need to get those little. There are some chemicals that we need to put in the water to make sure that it stays clean for them and healthy for them." So that was kind of a Montessori moment.
Exactly, and things like acid rain, right? That's a chemical change. That's a chemical change that occurs in the atmosphere when the rain falls. It affects us. It affects buildings, how they wear. It can affect crops. And so those are some of the things that we kind of juice up in an environmental way, right?
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. You got to juice it up to make it palatable for an 8th grader.
But also we engender stewardship, environmental stewardship in our students. And so, for example, they learn about solid waste, meaning where does your trash go? When you ask an elementary student what happens to your trash, they go, "You put it in the trash can."
And then the trash collector comes.
Sometimes they say that.
Trash
man comes. Sometimes they don't even see that part of it, right? As a small child, you may not even notice that someone's putting the trash out, and then the big truck is coming. They come so early in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
But they learn about that, and they learn about what happens in a landfill, actually how those things work. They learn about litter, how it travels, especially since we're in Memphis. We're right on the Mississippi. And so even if you're out in Bartlett or, West Memphis, that trash is going through our storm drain systems. And it's going to the Mississippi. And so that Mississippi, we know, travels right to the ocean.
Exactly.
So we're in a crucial physical location to affect the ocean health, believe it or not. Here in Memphis.
I know that's hard for me to wrap my mind around, and so God bless you for trying to plant those seeds early with kids.
Many of our students have not seen the ocean, of course, and many of them haven't seen the Mississippi River. The funniest thing is to ask a student whether they've seen the Mississippi River or not, whether you can tell whether they have or not. You ask them what color it is,
Oh, right. Yeah.
So what color is the Mississippi River? Well, of course, if you haven't seen it,
You'll say it's blue.
you'll say it's blue.
Because that's the color that it is in your textbook when you look at a physical map of the United States. It's a little blue squiggle line.
Exactly,
right?
but we know that the Mississippi is brown.
It's
And
very
so we
brown.
talked to them about that. And honestly, the Mississippi River watershed, which we teach a lot about watershed health,
Yeah.
covers more than half the country.
Yeah. Wow.
Even, states so far away. Minnesota, Wisconsin.
I know it's always wild to me when people, you growing up in Memphis, the Mississippi River is just ubiquitous. It's the thing that is here. And then when I remind myself that the mouth of the Mississippi River goes, the mouth is the top part, right?
No,
That's the bottom. Okay, I'm sorry. That's why I needed a science
The
teacher.
head is the top.
Exactly. But it goes all the way from Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico. That's wild to me. It's not just ours.
No,
It's not just ours.
No, it's not. And it's not just our pollution either.
Yeah.
Of course. But we do affect it. And if we can teach our citizens, right, our young people early to care about that. And they do. And so we've got students, hundreds of students, picking up litter all over the city of Memphis.
So how did you find yourself in this role where you are teaching kids during a pandemic about natural conservancy of their hometown? How did you get there?
Well, I'm not an environmentalist, so that's kind of maybe a plus and maybe a minus for my job, honestly. I'm learning the environmental science, but I'm a teacher, so I have some background.
Yeah.
I'm also an urban planner, and so I have that background of knowledge to bring. I've worked for a number of small nonprofits and really found that that's where I thrive.
Yeah.
Is in a group of people, and in this case, right now we're all women, in a group of women who are strong and hardworking and very much a team.
Yeah.
And so it's a great place to work, honestly. I work with an amazing group of women. And then the people that we touch in the city are incredible. We work with Shelby County School, the district personnel. We work with teachers, of course. We work with students directly. I don't get to do that quite as much. My day-to-day is a lot about managing relationships with our schools, with our corporate partners, our funders. We get a lot of support from our local companies.
Yeah.
And
International Paper.
International Paper is one of them. Absolutely. And that's right. That's what we're going to talk about, our partnership today, but also AutoZone and FedEx and, a lot of the big corporations that do support our environmental programming.
That's another really kind of special thing about Memphis and working in the nonprofit sector. You realize that, we were talking about our saint of the day earlier about, people who are in positions of power and how they can really make a difference if they're committed to it. And I think that some of our larger corporations here in Memphis, they do a good bit of good in supporting the work of smaller entities that are like Clean Memphis and MIFA and Church Health and all these, and St. Jude and organizations that are really, really making a positive difference. It's good to see how we all are in concert with one another.
Well, another part of what we do is work with corporate teams to find them volunteer opportunities.
Yes.
And so we definitely work with a lot of the larger corporations and some of the smaller corporations in town. Buckman and Nike, that that they're interested in getting their employees out to become stewards of the environment as well, and we provide that opportunity for corporate groups to do that.
Yeah, nice plug. So, if any of you listening are looking for a great team building activity for your team, maybe get in touch with Clean Memphis.
In fact, during the pandemic, a lot of corporations aren't working. Employees are not working from home, and so volunteer opportunities became a problem. We were able to be creative with some. We were teaching virtually, because students were not in schools, and we developed a book club for second graders around environmental stewardship, around water conservation, litter, recycling, composting, and we had volunteers from Nike who dialed in and read to the students, and that was fantastic. And then our educators led a lesson. But we were able to that's the best part about a small nonprofit, is how flexible you can be.
Talk to me a little bit more about that community planning piece and where you saw what you had learned during that portion of your career could be applicable to the work that was being done in the nonprofit sector in like the kind of environmental stewardship circles.
Well, my background is in community development, and in that, my first out of graduate school job had to do with anti-poverty work, and so we helped a number. This was not in Memphis. This was in Arlington, Virginia, before I moved here. But learning where the vulnerabilities are in a community was very key to the services that we provided to low-income individuals. And in Memphis, we see that when you drive through the city, the wealthier neighborhoods, they are clean. And the lower income neighborhoods, they are not. And honestly, a lot of that has to do with the service. If you have a community where there's a lot of traffic and a lot of business going on, then the neighborhoods are getting cleaned up. And in areas that they're not as important to our business environment, they're not. And so it's very important. There's been a disconnect as we have grown through into this century, where a disconnect between people and the environment, people and nature, and of course especially in large cities, right?
Where you feel like you have to allot time to, I'm going to Shelby. I mean, it's not to cut down anybody, but it's like, go to Shelby Farms, or you go to the park to enjoy nature, where it doesn't seem like that's necessarily, if you want to enjoy the outdoors or you want to enjoy where you are living, you don't need to get in a car and go there.
Exactly. And so we try to bond students with the nature that's right around them. We use a number of tools to do that. We use this great tool called iNaturalist that I'm totally obsessed with.
Is that the one where it's like an app on your phone and you can take a picture of something and it will spit out what it is?
Exactly.
Okay, wow, look at that.
Good job.
Yay.
It's my favorite app. Honestly, I use it for everything, and I live out in Shelby Forest, so I do get to enjoy nature on the daily, but I take pictures of all kinds of things and learn what they are. Students can do that as well, even on their campus, in their playground. There's all kinds of things to learn about our environment. And then that interconnectedness is really important. Understanding that what I do affects you, and what you do affects someone you may not even know. It may affect them now, or it may affect them in the future. And so
it's that butterfly effect.
Right. Students see that and they love it, because even as a second or third grader, I can pick up litter. Like, that is not beyond me. I can make sure my trash gets in. I can finish. We talk about food waste as well.
Yeah, and that was something I wanted to ask you about as well, because when I was looking on the Clean Memphis website, I noticed that there's a pretty decent chunk of real estate about food waste, and how Clean Memphis works with different restaurants and different food purveyors to kind of alleviate that food waste.
Exactly. That's one of our big goals. And when I joined with Clean Memphis 2.5 years ago, I didn't know anything about food waste. It's incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
40% of the food that is grown for our consumption in the world is not eaten. It's thrown away.
Yeah.
And that's all the land that's used for that. That's almost half of the land. And the water and the work.
Yeah.
And then the natural resources, the fuel that's used to transport that food. What about the avocados that went bad? They didn't come from around here.
Right. They came from Mexico,
They
and
traveled far.
and there was a lot of probably petroleum that got burned in the process of getting them here to Memphis, where they would subsequently be thrown away.
Exactly. So we're approaching the food waste issue from a number of ways. So we work with students in Shelby County schools to do food audits in their cafeterias. We just finished one in December. That is amazingly informative.
Yeah.
And then we're working with Shelby County schools to inform them of what we found, so that, for example, we did a food audit and the roll was not being eaten by a majority of the students. And we reported that back up the line. And don't you know, within a week, the staff were sourcing a new roll.
Yeah.
A roll that was softer.
Yeah.
Right? Because that was the problem. So we can work together to eliminate a lot of that food waste. They're also doing a project called the Memphis Food Waste Project. And the campaign 901 Save the Food. And those things are all on social media.
Yeah.
And
you got to be on social media.
Help us learn how do you keep food longer in your house? What can you do with your leftovers? I've learned amazing things from my friends at Clean Memphis, how they chop up their vegetable ends for the week. They throw them in the freezer and then make vegetable stock.
Yeah.
What? Who thought of that? I think that's an amazing thing, where you can actually, if you think, you can really use your resources. So, I just bought vegetable stock yesterday. I shouldn't have done that, right? I could have made my own.
I'm thinking of at Church of the Holy Communion, one of the churches in our diocese. They partnered with the Memphis Jewish Foundation, and over the last couple summers, they've been undertaking like a gleaning project, where at the farmers market at the Agri Center, I think that once a week, they glean the produce that otherwise would have been thrown away. It's donated by the farmers who weren't able to sell it, and they take it, they glean that produce, and then they have volunteer teams who work in the kitchens, or they volunteer at the kitchens that are on those faith community campuses, to create freezer meals that they then donate to different entities here in town that need, that they can feed people who are hungry.
Exactly. And that's one of the big projects.
And that's all stuff that would have been thrown away.
The Memphis Food Waste Project is going even further. What they're doing is they're creating an assessment of who has the extra food, what do they have, and then also who are all those last mile organizations, right?
Yeah.
Who are all the people who are feeding hungry people. And there's a lot of them. We have a lot of generous people in this city who are working to feed hungry people. But we need to make sure we know what their capacity is.
It's important for the right hand to know what the left hand is doing.
Exactly.
And that's where the partnership piece really comes in, where we need to be able to help each other out.
Exactly. So that's one of our
Streamline the
big projects
operation.
in the next year is to work on who has food that is left over. We do work with restaurants, caterers, as well as we're starting to talk with some of the larger venues in town to talk about what do they do with the food that's left over. And then we're doing an assessment of those last mile organizations. What's their capacity? What do they need? And trying to match those groups up. So hopefully very soon we'll have a lot more donations going on and a lot more feeding going on.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the many things that we've seen over the last couple of years that we've always sort of known about humming in the background, but definitely one of the things that the pandemic has really brought to light is how hunger is a major it's a major impediment to our community's well-being. And anything that we can do to make sure that people have a full stomach, and if it also dovetails into making our community a healthier environmental place to live. I mean,
exactly.
What could
it's a win-win situation.
It totally is.
Correct.
It totally is. So, what are some of the ways that people here in Memphis and people who might be listening to the show, how can they engage with Clean Memphis? How can they support what you're doing? Engage with your programs? What's your call to action? How can we help?
Well, we have a number of initiatives that we're working on. The food waste is one, and if you go to our website, cleanmemphis.org, you'll find a quiz or a test to test your food waste knowledge. It's shocking. The numbers are shocking.
Yeah.
And then after you take the test, there's an opportunity for you to make a pledge to monitor your food waste or to lessen your food waste. That might mean donating food as an individual. It might mean looking for ways to store your food better. It might mean cooking and freezing. We do that a lot at my house now that my children are gone. We cook a meal that used to feed 4, but there's only 2 of us.
Yeah.
So we split it and we freeze half of it. So just thinking through that food waste piece, how can you reduce the amount of food that you throw away? Composting, we have the compost ferry that is a paid service that is residential primarily at this time. They'll come and they'll pick up your compost on the weekly. That's not even that expensive, and then you also get mulch at the end of the year out of that, or compost. I'm sorry, not mulch. You get compost at the end. That's our food waste call to action. We also have a litter piece. In fact, we have the MLK Days of Service challenge that's still running because of the terrible weather last weekend. We've extended our MLK Days of Service challenge through the end of the month. And that's a challenge using another app, which is called Literati.
Yeah. Nice.
LITTER.
Love a good pun.
ATI.
Love a good pun, and that's a good one.
And Clean Memphis is partnering with Literati, has purchased the licensing, and we're basically doing some mapping. What it does is it records litter. Just like with iNaturalist, you use your phone to take a picture of a species of some kind. This, with the Literati app, you use it to record your litter. So I went over the weekend to participate, took my phone and a friend, a trash grabber, and a trash bag, and went along and picked up about 75 pieces of trash, took a picture of each item. It uploaded to the app, it geolocated it.
Wow.
And it allowed me to tag it. And so tagging is really important. The app uses AI, to learn what things are from pictures, but it's still in that learning phase.
Wow.
And so
Yeah,
by
so-
tagging your items by what material it's made of, what the item is, and then if you can tell a brand what that brand is.
Yeah. Wow. Now talk
Yeah.
about corporate responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's really where things are going, back to, at least we're hoping, back to some corporate responsibility, so that the manufacturers that are manufacturing and putting out these products that are littering our world will be responsible for their end use,
Yeah. So
end of life.
I'm really enjoying learning more about what Clean Memphis, all that y'all do. Michelle, like, what motivates you? And if can you share a little bit about how this work has impacted your, you said you're not a trained environmentalist. That's not your career path. But how does this work that you do, how does that play a part in just how you view the world and motivates you to keep doing this work, even when, I have to put the brakes on my own media intake sometimes because it can get really depressing.
Yeah, well, I'm in a job, though, that is very exciting and gives me a lot of hope for the future. When we work with young children, of course, anyone working with young children, if you're not affected by their joy and, just life force, right?
Or when you see a concept clicking, like, okay, now I got it.
But even just the joy of seeing children, like I teach a class regularly, right? We go into schools and we teach students about once every other week, and we teach a whole grade generally. And so just seeing the children be excited to see me, excited to think about Clean Memphis and what we're doing together as a group. I understand it's fun to see anyone other than your regular teacher at school. I get that. But the students really do enjoy the work. And I think what really lights them up which is what lights me up, is seeing them lit up, is the fact that we teach them that you don't have to be an adult to make a positive effect on the environment, just like you don't have to be an adult to make a negative effect on the environment.
Right.
And so...
Wow, that's an important side of the coin.
Exactly. And so when they understand, these are life practical things, but they're not things you normally discuss with small children.
Yeah.
And so discussing with them, like I would talk to you, talking to children about food waste and what it would do, or litter and how it can travel to the ocean and really affects our world. Seeing that they are empowered to pick up a piece of litter, or, last year really we learned that a lot of the litter that we picked up was water bottles.
Oh, anecdotally, that makes total sense. I just walk around. The ubiquity of water bottles is
students
kind of wild.
Over 2,500 pieces of litter in our litter challenge last spring, and 16% of that were water bottles alone.
Yeah.
So learning that, seeing it for themselves, made an effect. And now when I go into schools, I see students with reusable water bottles.
Yes.
I don't see them with the disposable water bottles. And our schools are moving toward allowing them to use. We have the pandemic and the water fountains and all that, but they are bringing their water bottles from school, knowing that it makes a difference. Being excited, we have students working on their campuses to find litter hotspots, and then trying to figure out a solution. What would be the solution to this litter hotspot right here? Do we need a trash can? Do we need, what do we need? Where's that litter coming from? Just thinking it through.
Yeah.
They get very excited about solutions because I don't think kids can really solve a lot of problems.
I think, there's a real angst among even adults, but especially kids about feeling like you just want to throw your hands up because this problem is too big for us to solve.
And they have so little control over their lives that I think that they really enjoy this opportunity to make a difference.
Yeah. It's neat to be able to, I always try to find the silver lining, which can be a challenge sometimes. But one of the silver linings of this, this season of pandemic is that it really is allowing us to interrogate some of the things that maybe we've taken for granted for a long time. I think that we can step back and see, like you said, why are we seeing all these water bottles? Why has that become the piece of garbage du jour? And being able to step back and say, okay, this is a problem. Let's discern a way to solve it, and how this maybe one challenge fits into a broader spectrum of issues that together we can create a solution for. We couldn't do it on our own, but when we work together, we really can affect a difference. This has been this pandemic, these last 2 years have been a time where a lot of the problems that have been simmering, that we've been hearing about for a long, long time, are really coming to the fore. And that it's an opportunity to be brave and to do big things that are going to have a lasting impact. And for that, I thank you for being that extra set of teacher hands. As a parent, I thank God for my daughter's teachers. I definitely thank God for anybody who is showing them and showing her that creating a better world, and a world that's worth living in and taking care of, is not something that she has to do on her own, and that the tools to do them are very accessible. And so for that, I thank you. And I thank you for the work of Clean Memphis. And so you have the website. Y'all are active on social media. Any other places where we can learn more or request a visit or whatever? How can folks engage?
So you're welcome to contact us. We are available by our first names at cleanmemphis.org.
Yeah.
So you can reach me at Michelle.
And this Waterful is Wonderful curriculum. How do people, is that something that y'all's educators would come out and teach at a school, or is that something that folks can get their hands on so that they can integrate it?
Let me tell you about
home?
that. During the pandemic, especially the first summer, when schools shut down and nobody really knew what was going on, we had an amazing opportunity to work with International Paper. If you heard my little resume, you'll see that I never have worked for a large corporation. So this is really my first experience interacting with a huge company like International Paper, and it was a great experience. They do community outreach and support education and environmental education all over the world where their facilities are. And they were interested in developing. They have a great curriculum called Paper is Power, right? They make paper. So they have a curriculum about the wonderful things you can do with paper, how it's made, and all those wonderful things. But they were looking for a new curriculum to really talk about their sustainability efforts, because if you think about a paper company, paper companies use a significant amount of water in their line of business. And if you're not being environmentally sensitive, that can be a very bad thing. But International Paper works very hard to reuse its water and its processes and to clean the water, and they return it to the environment. And so they also practice responsible forestry, which affects our water quality. And they wanted to be able to tell their story, but also provide education. A lot of standards. Water, of course, is wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's also a part of life. We can't have life without water.
Yeah.
And water affects everything that we do in our lives every day. It affects businesses, individuals, plants, animals, everything we do. And so they wanted a curriculum that they could distribute through their local communities that they work in to teachers, and they do support education, and so they have connections in all their local areas. And we were able to put in a proposal and won the proposal to be able to develop this curriculum for them. And it's about water. Water standards are everywhere in the elementary curriculum. And this is a series of 5 experiments and projects that are all hands-on. About water conservation, about how little clean fresh water we have, about how pollution gets into plants through water. Water properties. The properties of water are so fun. Water is so fun to play with. And we worked with a local graphic artist to develop this really fun, kid-friendly.
I've been sitting here, we've had it out on the table between us this morning, and I keep, the communicator and the graphic designer and me, I just keep looking at it. I'm like, oh, that's a really pretty, it's a really, really pretty poster. It's something that I think that I would kind of want like hanging up somewhere.
Right? I love it. I love the colors.
It's really fun. And
it really shows that water affects every part of our communities. The poster that's developed, you're talking about, has forests and urban areas and rural areas, farms, and really shows how water touches all the parts of our lives.
We'll definitely get a picture up on our Instagram.
So the way that we're using it, we do use this curriculum in our classrooms when we go into classrooms. Not only does it have the curriculum, but International Paper really wanted to support teachers, so they put together another box, not of paper, but of actual the supplies that are needed to do all the experiments in the kit. And so this kit has 2 parts to it: a supply box and a curriculum box. With all the cool graphics. There's a couple of worksheets for kids as well, where they can record what's going on. And we're using it as a teacher training tool as well. So there's only 3 of us, Emily. We can't affect, there's 100,000 students in Shelby County. Our little 3 can't do that. And so what we're doing is we're offering some opportunities for teachers to come and learn the curriculum, as well as some of our other resources. And then they'll get a free kit for their classroom.
Wonderful.
So just this last December, we worked with the University of Memphis with Dr. Logan Caldwell in the education department. And we worked with her students. She's a science education teacher. We worked with her students who were about to become student teachers and then about to graduate. And we did an environmental boot camp for them at T.O. Fuller State Park.
Nice.
Right after they got out of school in December, before the break. And we gave them, International Paper gave them complete kits for the Water is Wonderful. So that when they start their new classrooms next fall, they'll have all those supplies.
Awesome. Well, I have one 4th grader at home that I bet that program will touch her at some point, and I'm looking forward to hearing.
I sure hope so. We're training existing teachers that we have relationships with this summer on, and we'll be giving this away again during our summer boot camp.
Well, wonderful. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for spending some time and for all your good work with Clean Memphis. And when we have the podcast up later today, I'll be sure to add all the links for folks to get in touch with Michelle and with the work of Clean Memphis. So thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in to Faithfully Memphis this week. You can find us online at edwtn.org to learn more about the Episcopal Diocese of West Tennessee. Be sure to tune in to Faithfully Memphis next week. We're going to have Bishop Phoebe will be back, and she'll be interviewing Mia Madison, who is the lead at Memphis Tilth, talking about healthy growing practices here in Memphis and what we can be doing to complement the work of some of the other organizations that we've been hearing about during this season. Until next time, this is Emily Austin from the Episcopal Diocese of West Tennessee, wishing you safety and positivity.